Good afternoon, my name is Jackie Green. I'm one of the mental health nurses that works at Young Minds Matter. I am also part of the School Links team, so part of our role is to deliver training about common mental health and emotional wellbeing concerns to professionals as well as to children and young people. And one of the sessions, and this is a professional session, we're doing today is what is mental health. So if you keep a pen and paper handy, because it might be worth pausing the video and either doing some Q&As with your own team or writing some questions for yourself to then share with the School Links team, and we would do our best to answer them. Prior to the session there's also a pre and post measure, so hopefully you've completed that pre-measure, and then the post will give us an idea of whether or not this training has been of some help to you, hopefully. So, what we're going to cover for the next hour, aims of the session, is to understand the term emotional wellbeing and mental health and have a think about what we understand and what we mean by those terms. To consider what you already do to enhance a child or young person's emotional wellbeing and mental health, and that will give you a chance to think about what you do in your own workplaces. Because I'm sure when you look at that together, there's probably already lots of things that you're already doing that tie in with supporting a young person or child's mental health. And also we're going to look at the 5 ways of well-being, to use that 5 ways of well-being as a model towards mental health and emotional well-being. So this is a first exercise, and if we were doing this face-to-face, we'd either do it through discussion, or you'd all be given sort of big pieces of paper and you can write down and think through what you consider to be a healthy and happy child, and all of those elements that you would imagine that a happy and healthy child needs to function at their optimum. To think about together, this might be another opportunity to pause the video and ask yourselves or your team together what makes them happy and healthy. Okay, so I'll jot down some of the ideas that we regularly get when we deliver these sessions face to face. So a happy and healthy child is probably a child who has friends. Okay, maybe a child who accesses education, maybe on a regular basis. Okay, a child who's happy and healthy lives in a home where they might feel safe and might feel secure and have places where they can play and where they can go outside and enjoy some fresh air. So there's lots and lots and lots of different things, and I could spend the next hour on this video going through all those elements. So have a, just adding into those different ideas. So the next slide, what is mental health? And that's another opportunity to maybe pause the video and have a think about that together. So if you want to do that now. We get quite a few responses to this, and often we get, I think it might be maybe depression, or it might be feeling worried or feeling angry even. We tend to hear the idea that mental health is about having a problem or having even a diagnosable mental health condition. In actual fact, mental health is thinking about, like we just phrased the question about our children, well-being. What is it that makes us happy and healthy? What is it that supports our function, how we reach our potential, how we contribute, how we feel in terms of our health and our well-being. So we've got some pointers here just to explain that, and I think it's a really important difference when we're thinking of mental health and well-being in terms of the things that help us be happy and healthy. So it's a state of well-being which affects how we fulfill our potential, how we cope with stresses, we recognise, there's lots of challenges that adults and our children and young people face. But what we want to be able to do is bounce back from those challenges. We want to be able to have the resilience, the resources, the problem solving, the energy, the capacity to be able to solve them, work through them, whilst feeling optimistic, whilst feeling hopeful, and supporting that sense of well-being throughout that process. And to be able to achieve and to contribute, and that's really essential, particularly when we are thinking about our children and young people and their development socially, academically, emotionally. So therefore, there is no health without mental health. We need to be able to function emotionally and physically, to have that whole and holistic sense of well-being. Therefore, we need to work on maintaining positive mental health and recognise when our mental health is struggling. There's a really, really good video, which we have the link that you can use, and you can access that video if you would like to watch it at your leisure. It very much illustrates the sense of what we've just been saying on that slide about a sense of well-being, about being able to problem solve and respond to challenges on a daily basis, maybe some small and maybe some even bigger, but certainly coming through that buoyant, healthy, with a degree of positivity about that, feeling confident, feeling proud and feeling capable, rather than the opposite of what we tend to think about when we hear the word sort of mental health, about somebody who's actually been struggling to cope with those challenges and who may well be feeling quite anxious and not able to respond to them in a proactive and positive way. So that video is well worth a watch. Thank you. So have a think about, and this is again an opportunity to stop the video if you want to, but what does positive emotional well-being feel like? So we all have our individual stories, I'm sure, about what that's about. For some it might be feeling energetic, it might be just feeling okay with yourself, it might be feeling able to have the confidence to try something new or go to a new place or speak to a new person. There's lots of different ideas, and it's a really good opportunity maybe to get to know each other on the team, and certainly through that those discussions can lend themselves when we talk to our children and young people about what they think positive emotional health feels like, and helping them connect with some of those positive those things about them. So as we were saying about emotional well-being, being the happiest and healthiest child, functioning in the world, going to school, accessing learning, making friends, contributing to the community that they live in, functioning well, being able to access and use those opportunities, the leisure facilities, the creative centres, the educational centres, and really kind of making that positive contribution and feeling pretty well and okay and confident and proud of yourself whilst you're doing that. So certainly positive emotional well-being allows you to do that freely without too much negativity or self-criticism, and ideas that can actually act as barriers for you engaging and functioning in the world. Simply feeling good, and that can be at different levels or mean different things to different people. But generally, if you feel good, you're going to kind of have a sense of that happiness about maybe yourself, your situation, the current circumstances you find yourself in, optimism about the future, acceptance around what's going on around you, being able to see those positive things and really engage with those positive things that help you feel good. And I think this is something that we as professionals, that we as the kind of care network around our children and young people can really kind of support, promote, feeling valued and feeling connected, fundamental to a sense of well-being, to a sense of feeling proud and feeling able to engage and want to engage. It's often the children and young people that feel quite undervalued or very disconnected where they find that they have those emotional difficulties. So if we flip that on its head, that will look different in different circumstances. We can communicate value and we can share connectedness in all kinds of different ways, simply through a smile, or maybe even through a meeting you might be in at the moment, or a telephone call, or some kind of engagement with somebody that helps them feel positive and feel valued. So engagement, really kind of getting involved with the possibilities around you, the opportunities around you. And we work hard at engaging our children and young people in accessing the positive things that will support them in their well-being. And having fun with what you're doing, really enjoying any of the activities, any of the engagement opportunities, and the things that are helping them to function in this world. Enjoyment is really key, and I think any professional in the room would probably agree with that, and any child or young person who's able to feel happy and to feel good is likely to be enjoying what they're doing. And having that real sense of purpose, really important, that you know a sense of purpose can give you a sense of achievement, and that sense of pride is really valuable for health and well-being. So we are affected by what we do or how we cope and think. And I think those elements are very much about the kind of emotional well-being, and that question of what does positive emotional well-being feel like. Hopefully those prompts will help us paint a real clear picture of what we have in our minds about that, and what we can support it looking like in our working environments that we have when we meet our children and young people. So with this in mind, and we say list everything in your school, but it could be your other kind of working environments. You may be working in a family hub or a social service environment, whatever that might be. List those things that your working environment does to support your students and staff teams' mental health and emotional well-being. And I think if we bear in mind those things that help us feel that we can contribute and function and feel good and feel happy and feel that we're having that fun and that positive experience, I think then we can start to bed that out. So you could use this as an opportunity to discuss that, and to pause the video if you would like. So we're going to have a think about that, but relating to that model called the 5 ways of well-being. So first of all, one of the first sections of the 5 ways, it's quite a universal model. We talk about this with parents, children and young people, and a vast array of professionals, and we certainly talk about it within the team at Young Minds Matter. And we talk about the value of connection. We wonder in particular environments how you guys sort of do that. But we kind of think, why do we need that connection? Well, social relationships are critical for our well-being. We find it really difficult to cope if we feel isolated, we feel alone. And we talked about the importance of feeling connected and feeling valued. If we don't have the connection, we then very quickly start to feel undervalued, or feel very lonely, or feel very fragile and vulnerable. We are, by nature, by our own evolution, dependent on the social environments around us. We're group animals, we're pack animals, we need that working together sense of to give us that sense of purpose. So the connection in the relationships, key if we're thinking about emotional well-being. Positive relationships act as a buffer to mental health. And I think we would, maybe think of that in terms of when we're around our positive people, when we're around people that help us boost our confidence or help us to support in problem solving and coping with those challenges, then definitely without that, those mental health, those emotional well-being concerns may very much be much more prevalent or more difficult to cope with. So the buffer side of things, having that positive network, certainly that protective factor to support our emotional well-being and mental health. So connection promotes a sense of belonging, purpose and life satisfaction. And we can certainly do that within our own working environments, supporting each other in our teams and supporting the children and young people around us. When we think individually about what that purpose and life satisfaction looks like, and the opportunities daily, every day that we have to support that, promote that and to make that happen. Feeling close to and valued by others is a fundamental need, and we certainly are growing in our understanding of how important that is, right through our understanding of attachment, right from the very sort of early development and throughout our lifespan. And how we do that and the opportunities that we provide within our teams, our working environments, our homes, within our communities, all of that very much supports the health and the well-being, the emotional well-being, the children and young people that I'm sure we've got in our minds at the moment. And I think when we think about the word fundamental, it's absolutely that. It's essential. It's a foundational thing, and I think it's something we can all share, we can all recognise and sort of think about how we support. And connection is strengthening and broadening those social networks is also important for well-being. I think those opportunities that we can share for our children and young people to engage with as much as they can in terms of having those networks of friends, those networks of people that they can engage with all different activities, so they really kind of have lots of different choice and different opportunities to be learning and having that experience of positive connection is going to be invaluable for their emotional and mental health and well-being. So the next one, and the 5 ways of well-being, was to keep active. So why do we need to keep active? And again, if you have opportunity together to think about that before we move on to the next slide, that might be really helpful. But there's lots of evidence that would really support our understanding that physical activity makes us feel good. And it helps us feel good because we have an array of positive chemicals that our brain releases into our bodies. There's a whole list of them there, I'll leave you guys to read them. But I think we're familiar with the sort of endorphins and the serotonin, those types of things. But we do, research is definitely supporting the benefits of exercise, and there's certainly some GPs who would be prescribing exercise, to a number of different people. And the benefits of physical activity is something we all can promote for our children and young people. So exercise is an effective treatment of mental health problems and can assist in buffering mental illness. So yes, if someone's feeling quite low or even, quite depressed, that's the opportunity that, again, we would be looking at what activities, particularly that they enjoy, particularly the ones that give them a sense of purpose, a sense of pride, maybe even engaging with those positive connections, those positive groups. All of that really strongly evidenced to support mental health and well-being. And research shows a frequent bout of exercise of less than 10 minutes improves mental health. So there's kind of loads of initiatives, the Shake Up, Wake Up, for example, and other things out there that's really looking, at the value of just that quick fire movement, even in and around the office. We're told every, hour to get up, have a walk around, go on a wellbeing walk, do something that can make, and help your body move around. It doesn't have to be for that hour, but those are the sorts of things that we're able to promote in our own sort of workplace, schools, etc. So movement increases a sense of mastery and perceived ability to cope and distracts from negative thinking. So those new skills that you can learn physically and that positive distraction that physical activity can actually provide, particularly when things do sometimes feel quite challenging, or we might need, a space so it can act as that buffer so our negative thinking or negative feelings don't become too overwhelming. We certainly would be thinking about that with our children and young people when we're thinking about distraction, for example. And physical activity aids sleep, which helps mental health. And we're often talking about that, in quite practical terms, what types of activities that someone can do, someone wants to do in their daily routine, and explaining that that's a really helpful thing when it comes to sleep routines and positive routines throughout the day. So thinking about the next one, which is taking notice. So why do we need to take notice? Some answers there, but you can have a think about that before you take too much notice of the slide. So taking notice is being aware of what is taking place in the present moment. If you think about mindfulness, that's very much a element of intervention and treatment and a distraction that we all, we hear a lot about. We certainly talk about that a lot in Young Minds Matter, and quite routinely think about that with our children and young people and our parents and the professionals that we come in contact with, how valuable being in the present moment can be in regulating emotion and supporting that distraction from negative thinking, really helping emotionally to feel that bit more positive, because when we're focused on the present moment, particularly if we're thinking about maybe worries or anxieties, we're not imagining maybe dreadful things going on in the future, or maybe something very unpleasant that happened in the past. We're really being in that current moment and enjoying it for what it is, without judgment and without being too critical. We're accepting, if you like, just what's going on within the here and now. Increased awareness of sensations, thoughts and feelings has been shown to enhance well-being. And that's certainly something that we would do when we're thinking about noticing maybe how it feels when you relax, when we do say a tense and relax exercise. Really noticing your breathing. If you're breathing and we say, right, if you want to slow down your breathing, first of all, take notice of what's happening, how that feels in your body. If you want to take a deep breath, really take that time and that present moment to just do that in a very in a very noticeable way, so you can feel the changes in your own body. And that's something that a child that's very, very young, or anybody of any age, right through to very, very old, can do those in a very meaningful, purposeful way. And that's something that we do a lot of as well. Taking notice increases our ability to do something about our emotions if we are struggling. So we can notice those changes. We can notice maybe when we need to do something different. Maybe if we notice that there are some negative thoughts creeping in, or there are some negative, unpleasant feelings creeping in, that's something that tells us maybe this is time that we need to do something else, to shift our focus away from that, to help us feel that we can cope and manage, and to shift how we feel into a more positive feeling. Taking notice increases self-knowledge, understanding and self-awareness. And certainly just for that simple exercise of taking notice of your own breath helps you to really appreciate and notice what's going on in your body. The tense muscle, the progressive muscle relaxation can help you notice where the tension is. Noticing your thoughts and feelings just helps, really kind of notice when you do feel better, or maybe when you start to feel a bit more negative. So raising that self-awareness is a really good way of just finding out those times or that particular issue that would need some work. And that's something that we can all work on, and we can all support each other in working on as well. And the next, for the 5 ways of well-being, why do we need to keep learning? Again, just a discussion point if you would like, but there's lots of different kind of supportive reasons when we're thinking about promoting emotional well-being. A continuation of learning enhances self-esteem and encourages that social interaction. So certainly if you're learning something new that gives you a sense of achievement, pleasure, you can praise, all of those things are really, really helpful for self-esteem, self-confidence. And we have already talked about how social interaction, connection, can also support our emotional well-being. So keeping learning, participation in learning impacts on well-being and resilience. The practice of setting goals has been strongly associated with higher levels of well-being. It's particularly for setting your own goals, and again, it's about that achievement. And it's about the sort of the journey that you can take and the steps that you can take towards positive change, provide you with that hopeful feeling, that optimism, a real sense of purpose and value, something you can share, something you can feel supportive with, something that doesn't, really reduces that sense of isolation and really connects you to somebody else. And when you achieve something like a snowball effect, that's something really powerful for taking those next steps. And goal-directed behaviours that is self-generated, in line with personal values, leads to self-satisfaction. So that again, when you're learning moving towards your own goals, moving towards something that you think is going to be of meaning to you, give you that life satisfaction, that again just really helps with how you can feel about your particular life. And that's very, very important for well-being. So they're not somebody else's goals or not being imposed upon you. You can sort of work through and set them for yourself and discuss them and sort of evaluate them as you go, particularly when it's in connection, with your own personal values, something you really want to do. So we're thinking about the 5 ways of well-being, and we're going through each of those sections together, and one of them is, why do we need to give? When we think about emotional well-being, think about sort of our mental health, giving and receiving triggers reward centres in the brain, so that's instantly going to help us feel better. So if we have lots of opportunities that we can give, and when we're talking about this with our children or young people in assemblies, the giving can look like a lot of different things. Give compliments or give a smile, or just something says, giving not just a physical thing, but something that, give respect, something that really creates that sense of confidence, security, connection, really supporting ideas of well-being. So the giving can look very, very diverse, really, depending on who you're with and what your environment is like. Giving enhances a sense of purpose in society and the community. And certainly if we're thinking about that in our educational settings, there's lots of different ways I'm sure that would be really valuable for that sense of purpose. Giving in very small ways, but maybe in those bigger ways as well. I know our children and young people are very good at coming up with some of those ideas for themselves. And you guys, again, in your teams, through your discussion or your questions, may sort of be thinking about how to expand on those ideas as well. Children and young people who report a greater interest in helping others are more likely to rate as having a positive mental health and well-being. And that's really interesting, because I think, it's quite almost like an innate need in us, isn't it? We like to be able to help, and we like to be able to contribute. Gives us that real sense of value, and to have a sense of well-being by doing such a positive thing. Again, these opportunities and how we do that, how we support that happening, I think again it gives us that real creativity and an opportunity, particularly when we have in our forefront that will support our children and young people and their mental health and well-being. Giving, the notion of giving back to others promotes well-being. I think that's very much along the same lines. The giving category also includes the positive feelings of receiving kindness. So when we talk about things in our assemblies, we often talk about using kind words when we're talking or saying something to our friends or our teachers or someone in the playground or on the way home from school. Giving a compliment, really noticing something that's nice about something, or something's done well, so you really let them know that. And so there's lots of different ways I think that we can think about and use the notion of giving when we're promoting not just our own mental health and well-being, but the mental health and well-being of others. And I think that's the real value of these types of skills, because it really engenders something within our communities, I think, that's very positive, very meaningful, and I think something we can always keep just working on and doing on a daily basis. So just going to think, before we kind of wrap up this session, our take-home messages. And this might, again, be that opportunity just to think about what they could be. As a team, you might want to pause the video. But sort of from our point of view, that children and young people's mental health and emotional well-being, is important, and is something that needs to be worked on the same way that we focus on our physical health. We often think about the value of keeping fit and feeling healthy and going to the doctor and going to the gym and doing those things, and we know that if we don't, we might become weaker, or if we don't clean our teeth, we might end up in the dentist. With our mental health, we've gone through some skills and some strategies that we can do on a daily basis that really support mental health and emotional well-being, and by doing that, maybe hopefully prevents anything from escalating, or really starts to build the types of skills, the types of knowledge, the types of activities that can enhance our resilience, really help us with our functioning, our problem solving, our ability to cope when something difficult, happens, that notion of being able to bounce back. Those things are really, really valuable because we're faced with huge problems and huge challenges sometimes, or faced with daily challenges and lots of unpredictable things and lots of uncertainty. But these types of skills, really do support our positive ways of coping with that, positive ways of moving through those difficult feelings and thoughts. The 5 ways of well-being are useful, in considering what we do and what we can do. And again, these things can be utilised. They're tools and they're things to practice. They're things to actively just try, to kind of see what impact and to experience the type of impact that it can have, on our emotional well-being for ourselves and for each other. We're also kind of thinking through, and we have been doing this, is it's not just the child or the young person or the individual. This is about us as a team or teams or us as communities. And, that's so important. Because if we feel well, if we're able to support our own mental health and well-being, then, that in itself makes us much more productive and able to support other people. So the staffing team's mental health, matters too. So this is kind of like the whole picture that we're looking at as well. So there is a video that you can play for the 5 ways of well-being. It's certainly something you could share with your teams, and even something that you might want to share with your children and young people that you work with. So that's available for you if you would like to do that. So what do we think? Is there anything that you are going to take away from today? So have a little think about that. Maybe you could ask us or share that. We'd always be really interested and really excited to hear about something that you might well be doing. Best practice is always a really great supportive tool, I think, and learning tool for other people. So we'd be really happy to hear what you've been able to take forward if there is something and examples that you can share. And this slide is also, I think, a great opportunity maybe to think about how you could add to the original list that we had of what makes the happiest and healthiest child, given that we've talked about the 5 ways of well-being and we've spoken about those elements of mental health and emotional well-being, being able to feel happy, being able to function in society, being able to contribute. We've thought about that connection with the physical health and the emotional health, and trying to sort of think that the two have a connection and they are equally as important. So, just adding to that idea of what that kind of whole picture looks like of the happiest and healthiest child. I know in certain sessions we've drawn a kind of gingerbread man, and we've been adding those elements to it, and maybe even thinking about those 5 ways of well-being and what sort of different sections that they might fit in. If we're thinking of giving, what that looks like. If we're thinking of being active, being creative. So yeah, just maybe give that a thought. That could be another positive and helpful discussion that you could all have. So I'd just like to say thank you for listening. I hope you fill out your post form. I'll be really interested to get those back. So take care and thank you very much. Bye.